I started putting together a video series about habitat work, the different kinds of habitat that I perform on my farms and even on my clients' farms. But I actually wanted to take a step back, and before I publish any of those videos, I actually wanted to talk about my top 7 ambush sets for taking big bucks. And I think I wanted to take a step back because really when you're doing your habitat work out on your farms, the habitat work you're doing should serve a purpose. And one of the purposes should be to manipulate the habitat, whether that's a bed to feed pattern, whether that's creating pinch points or funnels or fence jumps, or creating habitat that emphasizes bedding areas. And always keeping in mind, how is this habitat or food plot work that I'm doing going to affect my deer hunting? So I think by relaying to you my top 10 ambush settings for archery hunting, for killing big whitetails, that's a starting point. Every farm that I've ever hunted on where I've targeted big whitetail bucks has had at least one of these 7 archery sets. And I went back and I tried to think of all the different big bucks that I have killed, or my friends and my family have killed, or numerous encounters with big bucks, and tried to figure out what do these encounters and what do these kills have in common. And it's these 7. It's these 7 ambush spots. Now there's a one-off or a two-off here and there where I've seen a random big buck. I don't know if I've ever killed a random big buck that hasn't been in one of these top 7 areas. And I didn't pick 7 because 7's a nice number. I didn't pick 5 because 5's a nice number. I picked these 7 because out of all the mature bucks that I've had encounters with or I've killed, it's been one of these 7. So this video might be a little different. It's not a lot of infield footage. I'm going to be doing a lot of animation video off my laptop. But these are the 7. Number 7 is timbered points. And these are points that connect bigger chunks of woods. It might be just a little draw or a little waterway, but it's something to keep those deer from wanting to cross a wide open field. They have a little timbered point that makes them feel more at ease. Number 6 is a funnel. Everybody knows what a funnel is, but I'm going to go through an example of a funnel. Basically a narrow strip of woods or some kind of cover that those deer feel comfortable traveling through. Number 5 is a brushy fence row. Not all fence rows are created equal. My favorite fence rows are ones that are brushy, and the wider that brush, the better. If you can get a fence row that's full of woody browse and maybe some cedars or some pines and some trees, where it's 5, 10, even 20 yards wide of this brushy fence row, those are the best ones. So number 4 is an inside corner. And when I talk an inside corner, the inside corner is formed by a piece of open ground, whether that's cow pasture, a really big food plot, agriculture land. That corner is formed by open ground. And so the timber is what's actually the outside of that corner. And we'll go over that. Number 3 is the downwind side of bedding. So when you have a bedding pocket, let's say it's 5 acres or 20 acres, the downwind side of bedding on one day might be the north end with a south wind. The very next day it could be the east side with a west wind. So the downwind side of bedding moves around that bedding pocket depending on the wind direction, and we'll talk about that some more. Number 2 is a ditch crossing, and you'll see a lot of this in hilly ground, where you either have a steep ditch out in a farm field or out in a big CRP patch. And the deeper the ditch and the steeper the ditch, the better. And then if there's a crossing, that's number 2. The other place you'll see it is in bluff country or really steep timber. You'll actually see it in the timber where 2 hills come together. Oftentimes there's a steep ditch. And if that ditch is very steep and very deep, the ends of it sometimes have a really good crossing, and we'll go over that. And the number 1 setup that I have for myself for killing big bucks year in and year out is a fence jump. And that's either a low spot in the fence, which is what I call the fence jump, or the ends where deer will wrap around, or maybe even a gate opening where there's a complete opening in the fence. And we'll go over the details on that, on why that's the my number one set. And then we'll also get into my favorite of those 7, which is not number 1, and I'll tell you why. And then I'll get into the details as to why fence jumps and fence openings and gate openings are my number 1 pick. I also want to get into a little bit, before we get going here, on why food plot or food source is not on the list anymore. And I used to hunt a lot of food plots and a lot of food sources, and I've killed some pretty nice deer on them. But my goal is to be able to hunt as much as I can and to not pressure the deer that I'm hunting. And to be able to do that, you really need to start getting away from hunting food plots, because it's an area where the reason why you planted a food plot is to attract deer to that spot. It's a food source, an evening feeding pattern, so a lot of the deer are coming into that food source, and if you're hunting right over it, it's almost impossible to do that multiple times and not have deer bust you when they're in the food plot, or when you're getting down, you're busting them, or even if you have an exit strategy, like someone's going to come and bump that food plot for you, you're still putting pressure on those deer. So depending on what your goals are with your hunting strategy, maybe hunting food plots or hunting a food source is a good fit for you. For me, it's not, because I want to put as little pressure as I can on the deer I'm hunting, so that I can continue to hunt all season long as much as I possibly can. So I want to explain why hunting a food source is not on my list. There's one exception to that. Late season with a gun, hunting over a food source can probably be one of your best strategies, but that's a different subject. So we're going to get in what I got on my laptop here. I got some Google Earth stuff I want to show you, and then we'll actually take you in the field and show you, I think, at 3 different spots where I have some fence jumps and ditch crossings and inside corners, and I'm going to actually show you in the field what it looks like. So let's just get into this a little bit. My example, I'm going to try and show you how to hunt the downwind side of bedding cover. In this case, we have this bedding cover that I have outlined in white here. We have a river coming through here, a creek, and all around that creek is really heavy, thick bedding. We have a couple side ridges full of cedars. The cedars aren't that old, so there's a lot of woody browse and grasses and stuff. Bottom line is, this is a phenomenal bedding habitat area. So if I wanted to hunt this area and be on the downwind side of bedding, let me just throw a couple tree stands in for you. On that side would be your east wind. I'm sorry. That would be your west wind area. We got north, just trying to give you a little bit of a, so you get the directions here. So you're gonna come in. I just changed this to show you some access routes. To hunt this west wind spot, you'll want to come in from this side somewhere, right? And get in there. So anything out of the west, you can hunt this edge, and you're on the downwind side of bedding. If you have an east wind, you're going to want to be on this side somewhere. And of course, you'll access that stand from this direction somehow. I think you're starting to get the idea. You can see there's a road up there. So there would be your south wind. Anywhere along this edge up here would be your south wind. And obviously your access, coming right from the road and sneak in, maybe cross there somewhere. And let's say there's a ditch crossing right in here somewhere. So I'm just going to kind of just draw a little ditch crossing in here. Let's just say you have a little ditch crossing right there by this south wind stand. Then you combine the downwind side of bedding with a ditch crossing, which makes it even better. If you have a north wind and you can't, hunt this downwind side of bedding with a north wind because your access is bad or you're afraid deer are going to get downwind of you hunting over here, well, then you just don't hunt that. But you can have multiple stand sites. Just trying to illustrate that a little bit. You can have multiple stand sites on the north side, for example, for a south wind. Just so you guys understand, I think you know what I mean there, but I'm going to put in red here the wind direction. Let's say the wind is out of the west. So the wind is blowing this way. You can see if the wind is coming from the west and blowing through the bedding area this way, you're going to want to hunt your west wind spot, which is on your east side. So hopefully you guys can understand that. So this is actually a live example, a real example of downwind side of bedding. You'll have some of your best hunting in this spot. Okay, some final points here about downwind side of bedding, because sometimes this can be confusing. The reason why hunting the downwind side of bedding can be so successful is because during the rut, about 3 or 4 weeks, end of October into maybe almost the end of November, if this is a prime bedding area, bucks know it. So they're going to be coming in and out of this area looking for a hot doe if they don't have one already. And a lot of times when they come into this bedding area, let's say they're coming from the south, they come into the bedding area, a lot of times if the wind is out of the west, they're going to go to the east side and cruise the downwind side of bedding themselves. That way they can scent check the entire bedding area by cruising this edge. So that's why you're going to set up over here with a west wind. With an east wind, it's the same thing. Let's say they're coming from the south, it's an east wind. They'll come on this west side and scent check the entire bedding area with an east wind. So, you can see that, right? If the wind is coming across the bedding, it's the west wind, it's coming across the bedding area, all the scent is going to be on this side, because that's the downwind side. So with a west wind, if you set up over here, that's a good chance of picking off a buck, especially if you can combine it with a fence jump or a ditch crossing, something else that gets them in bow range. And that's why you also want to be on the edges. If you came in here like this and didn't stop at the edge and walked, let's say, the edge of these cedars and set up in the middle of bedding, you might have a really good hunt or even two, but you're going to burn this bedding area out real quick, because if you're in the middle, something's always going to get downwind of you. So I hope that explains that part of it. Let's talk a little bit about morning hunting. I'm going to move this down a little bit. Let's say the prime food source is to the north. Let's just say this is all corn and soybeans. Maybe there's an alfalfa field up here, whatever it is. This is their destination, their evening food source. So if they're coming from these feeding areas and they're traveling this way back to bedding, you can't set up along this north edge on a morning hunt. So even if you have a south wind and you want to set up on this north edge in the morning, you can't do it if the deer are coming from this direction, because they're going to be downwind of you. So the best way to do that, and I do this all the time, is let's say we had a south wind, deer are feeding in these fields, and they're coming back to bed. I'll wait till, let's say, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. The vast majority of the deer are back to bed, and then I'll sneak in. I'll come from the road and I'll sneak in, and I'll hunt these downwind of bedding areas, but I won't come in till late morning. Conversely, let's say, same scenario, but let's say we have a west wind. Well, then you can do it. Then you can get in the morning, because these deer are going to come back in the morning.
you're going to come in from the east, and you're going to slip in and hunt this west spot, this west wind spot, but these deer are not going to have to come through you to get back into bedding. So I hope that explains that. The other last thing that's nice about hunting these bedding areas, the downwind side, in that example, you can hunt this west wind spot on the east side. You can come in here in the morning, you can have a nice comfortable ladder stand or something like that. You can hunt here all day. And at quitting time, generally, all the deer are out. They're going to leave. They're going to go out to your food sources. Maybe that's north, maybe that's south. So when you get down from your stand and walk out, you're not bumping any deer because they're already gone. In fact, a lot of these spots, the last maybe half hour of light, I don't even see a deer toward quitting time because they're all gone already. So hopefully that kind of wraps that downwind side of bedding and why it works. So now I want to take you to a farm I hunted years ago. It's got a bunch of different features on it. I don't want to really show you a lot of the stuff where I hunt today. There's just people that follow what I'm doing, and I don't want to give it away. I hope you can respect that. So let's go to a farm I used to hunt. The concepts are all the same. So I got this marked. Let's straighten this out as best I can. Those are just place marks. So not in any order here, but let's look at an inside corner, and there's a bunch of them on here. So when I say inside corner, I'm just going to mark it here with yellow. The open ground is what forms the inside corner. So you can see this is the open ground, and see how it forms that corner? And the sharper the better. We can just kind of go over here. I'll show you another. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's another inside corner. This one's probably maybe even a little better. So the open ground is what forms the inside corner. And what you have, if you follow my cursor, you have this big block of timber. And then you have more timber, but then you have another big block of timber. So let's say there's a big buck or a buck that wants to get from this block of timber. He's bedded out here, whatever the case may be. And he wants to get from that block of timber, let's say out to this point, or to this block of timber. The shortest path between the two, obviously, is just a straight line, just to walk straight across. But in many cases, you know, if he's bedded here, he doesn't want to walk across that open ground. So what that inside corner does is it pinches them down. So what you'll oftentimes find is that these bucks, they'll be in here and they'll be walking around doing their thing, and then they'll walk this edge and they'll wrap around that corner. They'll wrap right around that corner like that. Down along here, it's the same thing. You get these bucks that are in these areas and they're doing their thing. Instead of crossing that open ground, they're going to wrap around that corner. So what you do to take advantage of an inside corner is you hang your stand right there if you can, like right on the field edge. And let's just use red for our access. And this is all just in concept. So your access would come in from here somewhere. Now, if this is like alfalfa or corn or soybeans, that's not going to be a good access. So typically, your best access is cow pasture or CRP ground. Maybe it's warm season grasses where they're really tall. You can actually mow a path through there. If it's cow pasture and this is full of cows, that's good access. but you get the point of an inside corner, and it funnels the deer because it pushes them toward that corner because they don't want to cross that field. One final point on that, the best inside corners are formed this way, but they also have a fence. There's also a cow a cow fence here. And the reason why that makes it better is because that's one more deterrent, if you want to call it that, for those deer to cross that open ground, is if there's a fence. They don't want to jump that fence, so they'll follow around that inside corner. A timbered point or a connecting point was number 7 for me. And it's any of these points. So I'll just draw a couple of them out here. But you can see, like over here, maybe I'll do those in orange. So anywhere you have these points that come out, it's even better if the point, so if you have this big field, if that point, like here's a timbered point, if that point would come way out, maybe there's a waterway, so maybe that's like a waterway or a little draw on that field. That's what I mean by a timbered point or a brushy point. And the reason why is because these bucks that are in this timber down here are going to follow this brushy point out, and it's the closest point to get over here without having to cross this open field the whole way. So that's a timbered point. Now we get into funnels. So a timbered funnel, as you can clearly see, you got this big patch of timber here, and then this bunch of timber over here, and this is where it narrows down. It's only about 60 yards wide. So what you're going to do is you're going to hunt this side of the funnel in this example with a south wind. So up here is north. And then you'll hunt this side of the funnel with a north wind. And obviously access is very important. So let's just, in theory, let's just show you what your access would be. You know, your access might be down along this edge. It might be through the open ground if it's cow pasture, but that's your access for that stand. If you're hunting the other side, you're going to come from this side. So you're going to be down here somewhere. Again, hopefully that's cow pasture, CRP ground, and you don't want to be using that for your access if that's a prime food source like cut corn or alfalfa. But in theory, that would be your access. So here you have a combination of, draw this in real quick. You have this funnel here, but you also have an inside corner. So in this case, your south wind or your north wind would be good, but you could actually take advantage of the combination of a funnel and an inside corner by hunting more there. So that would be a combination spot. So now any deer coming through that funnel is in play, and any deer coming through that funnel and wanting to wrap around is also in play. And again, for that combo spot, your access is going to be somewhere in from there. And I'm just going to draw in a hypothetical wind. So for this combo spot, you're going to want your scent going from your stand out this way. So you always want your scent blowing the direction that you came in from. Usually in that open ground, because that open ground, again, in theory, is CRP, cow pasture, some kind of good access. In this area, we also have one example of a ditch crossing. So this is bluff country. So this is hilly country. And this is a ridge here, and this is a ridge. And where these two ridges and this timber come together creates a really big, steep ditch. So let me just draw that in for you, where that would be. You got this really steep ditch right in through here. I drew it in blue, but I'm not necessarily saying there's water in there. But the steeper and the deeper, the better. And then you'll notice that there isn't a ditch up here. See how it kind of tapered off? There really isn't one. So right in that area, you're going to find that deer are going to come like this, and they're not going to want to cross that steep ditch, so they'll travel high. They're going to travel high, so there's your ditch crossing. In this case, it's the high side of the ditch. The low side, same thing. Anything coming from here out in that cover, they're going to travel low instead of crossing where it's really, really steep. If you want to hunt the high side, you're going to hunt there. And that'll be your ditch with, let's say, a south, or a southwest wind. So your access obviously is coming from this cow pasture or CRP ground, so you can get in there. These are hypothetical, but you get the point. You're coming in like this. The wind is in your face. You're hunting the top side of that ditch. The wind is headed right out this direction. Maybe you're coming in from this direction here. Maybe that's cow pasture or CRP. You get the point. If you're hunting the bottom side of this ditch, you're going to come in from here, right? You're going to come walk through this, and you're going to get into your stand that way and hunt the bottom side. And then your wind is going to be going this way. So you can hunt this spot down here with a north wind. I'm sorry. This spot down here with a north wind, northeast maybe. And over here, you're going to hunt this one with a southwest, northeast, north, south. See how I'm doing that? And you never actually walk in the timber. See, none of my access trails that I did in red, none of them are in the timber. So everything is kept in front of you. So there you have a funnel, inside corner, a timbered point, the top side of a ditch crossing, the bottom side of a ditch crossing, and this is in hill country. So down where I hunt, the ditch crossings are more draws. It's more, let me just draw this in for you. Again, I'm going to do it in blue for you. It's these kinds of ditches. So this is more flat ground, but there's a big ditch right in through here. Right here's a big ditch. And again, the steeper and the deeper it is, the better. And then if you can find a spot somewhere where it's not as steep and not as deep, and you're finding that the deer are crossing, there's your ditch crossing. And then you can set up on this side for a north wind and this side for a south wind. I'm sorry. Yeah, and this side for a south wind. So that would be another ditch. That would be your ditch crossing north wind. That's a different kind of ditch. That's a ditch on more flat ground, and it's like out in a farm field or a CRP patch. So hopefully you get that. I hope that helps with some of these spots. So the last thing I wanted to show you was an example of a brushy fence row. So again, this is a farm I used to hunt. And you can see here, these are all pine trees that are grown in. This used to be CRP ground. And back when I used to hunt it, these pine trees weren't here. But you can see, if I zoom in, this is actually a fence. There's actually a fence through here. And you can see it's timbered. There's a bunch of brush in through here. And I can't count on both hands the number of times I saw big bucks use that brushy fence row. So the whole point is you got these deer in this timber trying to go to this timber, and they'll use that brushy fence row for cover. So you can give yourself a mock scrape to hunt over, to slow them down, maybe put a camera there. But back when this was CRP, I'll show you how he hunted this. Sat on that side of the fence row. With an east wind. And this was all CRP, and you can't tell by Google Earth, but it really dropped off. So this is hill country. So from there to the west, it really went down. So you could hunt this with an east wind, and even if deer got behind you, they rarely smelt you because it dropped off so fast. And any deer moving along this edge came right by your stand. So that would be a brushy fence row. They really like to use those as a travel corridor. And I mean, this stuff just adds on itself. What made this one really good is, I mean, you're going to see it as I draw it here. What do we got there? We got an inside corner. We got another inside corner. So in this case, it actually was a couple inside corners in that brushy fence row. So it really, it really funneled them through there. Access to this one wasn't as great. So this was actually row crop. The best way to get in here, because deer did bed back in this ridge and stuff, the best way to get in here was on an evening hunt. You would actually come right through this, you know, if it was cut corn or beans, you'd walk right through that, get out there early, you know, 1, 2 in the afternoon, hunt that. But then you had to have an exit strategy. So you're either lighting up a coyote call, or back in those days, what we had was we always hunted in pairs, or there was 2, 3 of us on that farm. So we always said, hey, I'll meet you back at the four-wheeler. And if I'm not there, you know, a half hour after quitting time, oh, by the way, this is before cell phones, so kind of aging myself here, but if I'm not back at the four-wheeler, you know, half hour after quitting time, you know, drive the four-wheeler down here and bump the deer off. And that actually worked pretty good. So that's a brushy fence row.